how much can I expect to spend in retirement with a $4.5 million retirement investment portfolio? That's what we're going to look at today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel. And I want to look at 2 rules of thumb, and then I want to go into a deep dive into the Financial EKG software to show you how much you can expect to spend. So let's look at this. We've got $4.5 million in retirement assets. The first rule of thumb that most people will use when trying to plan out their retirement income is the 4% rule. And the 4% rule is really simple. It just says that you take 4% of your retirement investing accounts each year. You do that plus inflation, and your money should last about 30 years in a normal market cycle. So for this, if we take $4.5 million, we multiply that by 4%, this is going to give us $180,000 a year in retirement income. Now, you might be thinking, Drew, that's great. I want $180,000 in retirement income. And that's very true. But you also have to consider with the 4% rule, what kind of money is this? What bucket did this money come from? What if all this money is 401k? If all this money is 401k, then all of this $180,000 right here is taxable. So if all of this is taxable, and you live in, let's say, the state of New York, where this couple lives, which we're going to look at, they're going to be in the 22% federal tax bracket. They're also going to be in a 9% state tax, state and local, because they're in the Staten Island area. And so you've got to understand, if I'm pulling money out of my retirement investing accounts, what's that look like from a tax standpoint, not just a gross number, how much can I get? Because if you take 22, right, and you add 9 into it, that's 31%, $180,000. Take 31% of that for taxes. Now, I understand we have a progressive tax code, and we're going to get into that in the details, and I'm going to show you the progression of that. But just in holistic numbers, that's a lot of taxes that we've got to be prepared for. So understanding taxes and withdrawal buckets is just as important as understanding the number of how much I'm going to receive in retirement income. Now, the second rule of thumb that you can use to plan out your retirement income is the 80% rule. Now, let me show you what the 80% rule says. So let's use Jill. So we've got Jill as our client today. She lives in New York. She's married. She's the only one working. Her husband retired a couple years ago. And Jill has made $228,000, okay, for the last few years. What the 80% rule says is take 80% of that $228,000, and that's how much you're going to need in retirement income once you retire. So let's pull out the handy calculator. $228,000, multiply that by 80%, that is $182,000. So the 80% rule says that we're going to need at least $182,000 for our retirement income. Now, remember what the 4% rule said. The 4% rule on their $4.5 million said they're going to need $180,000. So these two rules actually work together in helping you plan out your retirement income. Keep in mind, with the 80% rule as well as the 4% rule, we have to understand taxes, and we have to understand inflation. And we're going to get into that in just a second in the details of all this, because taxes and inflation can erode your retirement income faster than anything else in your retirement, maybe outside of healthcare if you have a chronic condition, because healthcare inflation is running at about 7%, whereas national inflation is running about 3.26 according to the Federal Reserve. Now, they don't count food, they don't count energy, and they can add and subtract things from their basket of goods anytime they want. So I'm pretty sure that's a manipulated number, but we're going to go with it because that's what we've got to work with. So how much can you spend in retirement income with $4.5 million? Let's get into an exact scenario of that right now. All right, I got a $4.5 million retirement investment portfolio. How much can I expect to spend in retirement? Let's do a deep dive into the software to show you the tools that will help you plan your retirement. Okay, so here's what we've got. We've got Jill and we've got Randy Turnover. That's their name. Now, that's not their real name. We've changed the names to protect the innocent. Here are their assets. We've got a Fidelity brokerage account of $550,000. We have another brokerage account of $27,000. We have an inherited IRA for Jill for $18,000. We have a stock account for Jill of $45,000. We have Jill's 401k that's worth $1.2 million. We've got Jill's old 401k from a previous job. That's $846,000. We have Randy's old 401k. Remember, Randy is retired, of $1.789. We have an I bond of $11,000, and we've got about $30,000 sitting in the bank. Now, the reason I wanted to go through each individual account is because the taxability of each individual account is different, and the withdrawal order of your retirement income from those individual accounts is super duper important. So let me show you what I mean by that. So we have a joint account with Fidelity. There's $550,000 in that. Now, we're going to get into cost basis and dividends here in just a second. But for Jill and Randy, if they pull money out of this $550,000, they're going to pay taxes on dividends, capital gains, and interest, and they're going to get to write off capital losses. We call this a freedom fund here at Pearl Wealth Group. What the freedom fund allows us to do is the freedom to retire, or the freedom to make tax strategy planning, or the freedom and the flexibility to adjust our retirement income in any way we want. So for Jill and Randy, they're going to retire now. And so we're going to use their Fidelity account, this $550,000, this $27,000 brokerage account. Both are freedom funds. We're going to use this inherited IRA account for Jill and her stock account as the first bucket of retirement income. We're going to do that because they're not going to pay ordinary income tax on that money except for the inherited IRA. So we're going to use that money, and what we're going to be able to do is do tax planning on all of that 401k money that's on the backside. Keep in mind, for Jill, we've got this $1.2 million, we have this $846,000, and for Randy, we have this $1.789. All of that money is pre-tax. And they live in the state of New York. And New York's like, let's go, give me that money. And Uncle Sam's like, let's go, give me that money. Right now, there's $45 trillion sitting in retirement accounts. The U.S. government knows that, and they want your tax dollars. So what we need to do is we need to use these buckets for retirement income, and we need to use these buckets for Roth conversions to try to push those taxes into these low brackets that we have now and push them later down the road into the Roth accounts so that we're pulling the money out tax-free. So the ability to have some maneuverability in this is why we want those freedom funds. Okay, so let's go back to the front and let's kind of give some basic information for Jill and Randy and see how we got where we're at today. Now, I love what Proverbs 24:27 says. It says this: do your planning and prepare your fields before building your house. Jill and Randy came to me before they were fully retired. And so we did the preparing, the planning, the prepping of their field before they built their house. They built their retirement house. We call that a ROC strategy, retire on confident knowledge. And so that's what we're going to look at today for them. Now, Jill is working. She makes $228,000 a year, and we're retiring in July. As of recording of this video, it's the last day of June, so Jill is retiring in the next month. She also gets a bonus of about $57,000 a year. Again, July is when all that is ending. Now, from a Social Security standpoint for Jill and Randy, if they claim at 67, Jill's going to get $30,624 in full retirement. Randy would get $26,919. Now, keep in mind, if you claim Social Security at 67, if you were born in the year 1960 or after, you will get 100% of your full retirement benefit. But if you claim earlier, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, you're going to get a reduced benefit. At 62, it's 70% of your full retirement benefit. Now, if you wait until 68, 69, or 70, you'll get an increased benefit. I call these people overachievers, broccoli eaters, and you're going to get 124% of your full retirement benefit if you wait until 70. So let me show you what that looks like for Jill and Randy. So for Jill, if we were to claim at 62, she would get $25.37 in Social Security benefit. That's a 70% reduction from the $3,624%. Not a 70% reduction, a 30% reduction, so 70% of her full retirement benefit. Got to make sure I say that right or you will kill me in the comment section. Now, Randy, his full retirement benefit is $26.19. If he claims at 62, his 30% reduction or his 70% claiming of Social Security would be $1,833. And you can see how these go up with every year, 63, 64, 65. Now at 70, we've got a $4,000 number here for Jill. And we've got a $3,200 number here for Randy. And a lot of times when we're talking about Social Security, it's usually a game time decision. What I mean by game time decision is, where's the market? Where are your investments at? Where's Social Security at when we get to those appropriate ages? Most people will tell me, hey, Drew, I'm 53. I'm claiming Social Security at 62. It's my money. The government's had it for too long and I'm taking it right now. That's perfectly fine. I've got a lot of videos on this channel talking about claiming Social Security early because it made sense for those individual people. For Randy and Jill, because of how our assets are set up, because we have those freedom buckets, if we can push Social Security to 67, 68, 69, maybe even 70, if the market cooperates, if we're able to get the rates of return that we want on our stock market investments, that's going to give them a guaranteed stream of income that has a guaranteed COLA on it, backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. Now, I obviously understand that things can change with Social Security, but I highly doubt your congressperson is going to want to come on TV and tell you, hey, I know you're in your 60s and you're going to claim Social Security early, but we're going to have to take money away from you. And because of that, you're not going to get your full amount of Social Security. They will be voted out of office. What's actually probably going to happen is it's going to hurt me and my kids more than it's going to hurt you in your 50s and 60s. So for Jill and Randy, we still want to do exact planning for them, understanding that Social Security is probably going to be in its same form as it is currently. Now, we don't have any pensions, okay? We've already gone through assets. We've got about $4.5 million in retirement assets. We've got a home that's worth $700,000. So when we look at our total net worth, we have spendable assets of $4.5 million, and we have protected assets of $700,000. That's the home, for a total net worth of about $5.2 million. Now, Randy just actually bought an old dump truck and he's working on that. I'm not sure if that would be considered a total asset since it's like a 1960s dump truck, but really excited to see how it goes. And hopefully he can find me my 85 C10 because that would be my dream truck because that's what I grew up driving on the farm. Now, from an expense standpoint, we've got $9,964 in monthly expenses. So you can see where this all is laid out. Baseline expenses are $45.83. These are your survival expenses. So going to the grocery store, streaming bills, some of your insurances are in there, not health insurance, but some of your insurances are in there. Anything that you're going to be needing at 90, that's in the baseline. Now we have house repair, car repairs of $416. We've got utilities, water, cable phone, property taxes, home and car insurance, and we also have health insurance of $1,450 forever. okay? And we have IRMA built into here. Now, IRMA is the cost of Medicare that comes out of your Social Security check at age 65. Currently, it's at $185. It can go up based on your income, married, filing jointly, or single, whatever. Now, the health insurance number is $1,450. We're looking at this in perpetuity. Will their Medicare cost at 65 be $1,450 for the couple? Probably not. That's like, I know it's somewhere in the $700 range. That's $725 a month for each of them. That's probably going to be too high. But I would rather shoot here, and if we come in here, we high five and we chest bump. So what we're trying to do is get an accurate reading of what our current monthly expenses are and what's the inflation rate that's going to be on those current monthly expenses. Because if we don't understand our inflation and we don't have a budget, I always say that's a curse word for most people, a B-U-D-G-E-T, budget. If we don't have that, then understanding how much can I spend in retirement makes no sense, right? If for Randy and Jill, if they needed $200,000 a year in retirement income, and that's a crazy number. But if I told them, hey, your portfolio can shoot up $180,000 a year and you're going to be just fine. But if they needed $200,000 because they did a budget, then me telling them they need $180,000 makes no sense. That's negative 20 of what they actually need. And that works just for you if you've got $500,000 saved or $100,000 saved or $1 million saved for retirement. It doesn't matter. You want to understand your budget, you want to understand inflation, and you want to understand how much income do I need to satisfy those two pieces plus T-A-X-E-S, taxes. Okay? Let's go taxes. So here we are. Here's taxes. Let's go to the year 2026. So what we've got our federal taxes and we have our state taxes. Remember, I told you they are in New York and they have state and local taxes. So from a tax standpoint, we've got about $140,000 in taxable withdrawals, okay, based on where we're at currently. So that's putting them in this 27.5% tax bracket. Now you might be thinking, Drew, 27.5, that seems really high. What we've done in this standpoint is we did an increase for them of taxes of 25% just to see what would happen. Now, I understand the way the current tax code is, we're probably not going to see an increase. So let's take that down to 0. And they're in the 22% bracket. So what we're trying to look at in every situation is what ifs. What if taxes go up? What if inflation goes up? What if the market doesn't return what we expect it to return? What if I have a life event? What if I have to go into long-term care? What if my spouse dies? It's kind of like your blood work, right? You go to the doctor, you do your blood work, he looks at it and he says, hey, Drew, I have genetically high cholesterol. He says, hey, Drew, your cholesterol is a little high. You have the risk of a heart attack over the next 10 years. I might live till I'm 95 eating lard. But the doctor's looking at it and saying, hey, based on these situations, based on your projected blood work and your eating habits, this is kind of what you're looking at. And so we're doing the same thing with our retirement planning. Now, thank God my cholesterol is lower and I am eating better. Kale, lots and lots of kale. But for them, what we're trying to say is, what if? So we're in the 22% bracket from a tax standpoint. Here's our state taxes. So our federal tax, $14,379, state tax, $9,898. $24,276 in total taxes. So when I'm talking to you about $180,000 is what they can generate using the 4% rule on $4.5 million, you've got to take out $24,276 from that 180. Or you got to add $24,000 to the top of the 180, which is more than the 4% rule. So you see how this can get a little quirky as you go through it? Now, let's go back. So that's taxes. Let's go to retirement because they are retired. So essentially, we've got some deferred comp coming in here. Here's our distribution, $10,098 for 2025. Let's go to 2026, $10,427. Here's our assets. And essentially at 80 years old, we've got $5.4 million. Now we're doing a rate of return of 4% for their money, 2% in the bank, 4% in the market. So it's a very low rate of return. I'd rather come in low than come in high. I had someone send me a proposal from another advisor at one of those large brokerage houses that said, hey, we can get you 8 to 10% a year for the rest of your life. I almost fell over. I was like, are you serious? You're projecting out 8 to 10%. Now, I understand the market is averaged somewhere around 8 to 10% for the last 50 years. But like, you're gonna guarantee that? Seems a little silly. So let's go to a year and let's look at the exact income on this. So let's go look at 2026. So we have two scenarios here. We have pre-Social Security, and then we have Jill going on Social Security, and then Randy going on Social Security. So let's look at it before Social Security first. So from an income standpoint, we basically have our net monthly expenses right here. And then we have what we had to pull out of the portfolio to satisfy our expenses, okay? So how much did we need to pull out? $141,033 to satisfy our net monthly expenses of $123,305. Remember, taxes. So for them, this was the number that we need to generate from their investments. Not what's the max I can spend and blow it all. It was how much matches our budget, right? And we have fun and travel and doing cool stuff in their budget, but what matches where you're at? We're not trying to build a plan that can be attached to just anyone. That's Pillsbury dough. That's pop it out of your fridge, put it on the cookie sheet, and put it in the oven and eat your cookies. What you want going into retirement is a comprehensive, individualized retirement plan that's built on Jill and Randy. It's built on you. And if you want that, go to the description below. Let's get together. Let's build out your financial EKG. So again, we're at 141. Now, that's pre-Social Security. Let's go to Social Security. So now here's Jill going on Social Security at 67. So let's look at this. So she goes on Social Security. So how much retirement income do we need to generate now that Jill is on Social Security? Well, let's do some simple math. Jill's going to get $43,488 from Social Security. Okay? Here's our expenses, $151,698. That's with inflation, right? That's inflation growing our expenses. Our net monthly cash flow that we need to pull out of our portfolio is $143,508 because of taxes. Social Security's tax, called provisional income. You can see that right here, okay? So we have these two numbers that are getting us to where we need to go. So $143,508 is what we need to pull out of our portfolio. $43,488 is what we got from Social Security. That is $186,000. So $186,000 is what Jill and Randy can expect in retirement income once Jill is taking Social Security. Okay, now let's clear this. Let's go to Randy going on Social Security. So here's Randy at 67. So let's go to 2036. So now we've got them both on Social Security. Jill's is increased with COLAs. So our Social Security now is $80,052. Here's our net monthly expenses with inflation. Remember, it was $153 when Jill was 67. Now Randy's 67, and it's gone from $153 to $174. That's $20,000. Here's our net monthly cash flow, $135,498. It actually went down. So we were pulling out $140, $143, $145. Now that Randy has waited until 67 to pull his Social Security, we've maximized this column here. Now what we have to pull out of our portfolio has gone down, and that would work for you if you've got $250,000 saved for retirement, or $750,000 saved for retirement, or $2 million saved for retirement. We're trying to look at how can we maximize our Social Security to best benefit what we're pulling out of our portfolio, right? Because we don't want this to go to zero. And if it does go to zero, we want this number to be maximized because cash flow in retirement is king, little k. Jesus is king, big K. Cash flow is little k in retirement. So let's add these up. $80,052 plus $135,498, and that's $215,000. That's how much their portfolio will generate for them in retirement income, along with their Social Security, along with everything added together. We're at $215,000. So that's what you've got to look at. It can't just be how much can I get? It's how much can I generate based on the system that I'm in? Social Security, pensions, taxes. Now, let's do something fun. I want to go back to their assets. And I want to go to this brokerage account here that's $550,000. And what I want to do for them is, this is something that we do for our clients. And when we're going through the EKG, we really try to dive down in on this. So for them, we've got $550,000 in a non-qualified Fidelity account. Non-qualified just meaning you're going to pay taxes on dividends, interest, capital gains, right? Well, the cost basis for this account is about $300,000, meaning they've put in $300,000 to this portfolio over time, and it's grown to $550,000. We're currently reinvesting dividends, but what we could do is we could use those dividends to pay expenses. And from a percentage standpoint, our annual yield at the current level, let's just say we can get 4.5%. Let's be conservative on this. And we're going to pay this out for life. So this portfolio is going to generate 4.5% on this $550,000 as we pay it out for expenses for life. We're going to have long-term capital gains taxation because this is a portfolio that we've held longer than a year. So a short-term capital gain means you bought Apple stock on May 1st and you sold it on July 1st of the same year. So anytime you sell a security, mutual fund, stock, bond, less than a year of holding it, and you have a gain, that's called a short-term capital gain, and the taxes fall under ordinary income. A long-term capital gain means you held your stock, bond, mutual fund longer than 12 months, and then you sold it for a gain and didn't repurchase the same stock, bond, mutual fund, or similar stock, bond, mutual fund within 30 days. Then you have a long-term capital gain. So for them, we're going to look at long-term capital gains, and we're going to look at qualified dividends, and we're going to save and close. So now we go back to retirement and we go to 2026. Now look at what we've got. We've got this Fidelity dividend inflow. So now here's our monthly cash flow, the Fidelity dividend, $19,922. Here's our net monthly cash flow, $114,548. Now why is that? Because now we've got this $20,000 flowing in, and this is $123 that we need for expenses. So we only have to pull out this from our portfolio, right, from taxes, because we're getting this in dividends. That's the beauty of doing this. That's the beauty of doing this kind of planning. You see that? Let's go to when they're both on Social Security. We still have our dividends coming in, okay? And so now, 135 and 80. What's that number? Let's do 135 plus 80. That's $215,000 because we have those dividends. So this is a wonderful way to look at your portfolio and to determine how much can I spend in retirement based on the amount of money that I have saved. Well, I hope this video's helped. Thank you for watching. God bless. Goodbye.